So, good morning, Vilnius. I have one bad news and one good news. But the bad news is that I will do my presentation in English. I'm not the only one, I think. The good news is that I will not do a corporate presentation. My goal actually is to give you keys to know how you can improve the sustainability aspect of facades. And I would like to say also to the entire building envelope. We sustainability people, usually we start with a drama story on climate change. This chart is actually showing you the evolution of temperature across the last 2,000 years, but you know the issue. And we are in building and construction, and actually we are part of the problem and part of the solution. And I was quite happy that Sharon has mentioned this value. I have 39%. But you said 40% of the global emissions are actually related to the construction industry. So indeed, we are part of the problem, but also part of the solution. If we break down actually that number across the full life cycle of buildings, we see that the use phase is responsible for approximately 70% of the emissions. And materials, construction and recycling accounts for roughly 30%. And that's what we today call the embodied carbon emissions. But you are architects and building designers, and across the years you have improved the way you are designing buildings, and the solutions have improved. So the use phase emissions have been drastically reduced. So today, when we look to the life cycle perspective, the full life cycle of the life of a building, well, the construction phase, the materials, the solution account now for 50% of those emissions. To prepare this presentation, I had some chats with architects to discuss about what are your mega trends today in terms of designing a sustainable building, offices, schools, homes, all that. And we came up actually with 4 facts that I would like to share with you. The first one is that today, climate change emissions, broadly the ESG, environment, social and governance impact, but also circularity, will be part of your reflection. First, because you want to improve your building. The second one is because if you look to the most modern building rating schemes like BREEAM or the future version of LEED, the version 5, those concepts will be included. And then, last but not least, some EU upcoming initiatives on sustainability, for instance, the green public procurement, will encompass those aspects. And if we take this GPP, the green public procurement, you know that there will be criteria for public offices or public buildings. And they will actually tackle first emissions, that's logical. The second one is the comfort and the well-being of users, logical. Life cycle costing will be introduced. Biodiversity will be introduced, as well as vulnerability and resilience to climate change, which is quite an interesting concept. So that means when you will design public building for the future, you will need to think about what can happen and what can climate change do in that building for the upcoming 30 or 50 years. The second fact is actually because of all those requirements, more information and communication will be required across all the stakeholders. The designers, the material producers, the system providers will need to communicate with the architect and the owners about all those facts, carbon footprint, but many other information. And this is where digital product passport and digital communication will take place. The third fact is, but those buildings will be better. They will have more sustainable aspects. Will the investors be ready to pay a little bit more to give a premium for those buildings? And most all of the architects, not all of those, told me, most probably investors will pay a premium for more sustainable buildings, especially if they are achieving higher ratings in BREEAM and LEED, for instance. And then the fourth fact, they told me, we should not forget about renovation. A lot of buildings need to be renovated. They were built in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. And this is a challenge. We cannot destroy buildings, demolish buildings, and restart from scratch we have to think about innovative solutions, reskinning of facades, for instance. And actually for us, aluminum producers, but also for the steel producers, the concrete producers, this is great because this can lead to urban mining, to let us recover recycled existing materials and to transform that into new products. So what can you do to improve the sustainability aspect of the building envelope? Well, you know, I told you is to work actually on the use phase and also on the embodied carbon, so the selection of material and systems. Well, you need to have a starting point to know what is the carbon footprint of a building. If you have no clue, you can use this number for offices, roughly shooting from the hip, so ballpark figure. The carbon footprint per square meter of an office building is between today, business as usual, between 800 and 1,500 kilo CO2 per square meter. Now the next question is, well, how is that actually break down? What is the percentage for facades? Well, if you look to, we have looked into several studies, reports, but we have also done calculation and estimations with architects on several projects, and roughly facades, depending on the type of facade, if it is a unitized curtain wall or if you have cladding, but that's between 10 and 20% of the total embodied carbon of a building, which is quite substantial. So that means by developing better facades, you can have, you know, an effect on that 10 to 20%. So it's not marginal anymore. So that means that you designers, architects, engineers, you need to make decisions concerning the materials you want to use in your projects. Of course, you know about the mechanical characteristic, the technical performances, and also the aesthetical aspect you want to have for those products. But you have understood that you have to integrate nowadays this sustainability aspect. And one of the key metrics in sustainability today, it's not the only one, but the most communicated metric in sustainability is the carbon footprint. And we produce aluminum, and aluminum is actually a strange monster. And it is probably among metals the material that shows the largest variation of carbon footprint according to how and where the aluminum is produced. So this is a fantastic chart because it shows you what happens if you are not talking to your producer. If you don't talk to your producer and you want to calculate the carbon footprint of an aluminum object, you will go into databases, life cycle assessment databases, and if you don't know where it's produced, you will go to that number, 16.7 kilograms CO2 equivalent per kilogram of primary aluminum. It's a worldwide average, including China. Is it correct? Well, yes, if you have no clue where the aluminum is coming from, it's a good starting point. But it's huge. If you produce that aluminum, that primary aluminum with renewable energy, like the hydroreduxa, you will be at 4. And that's unique for aluminum. You do not have that for steel, you do not have that for concrete, such variations. So this is why it is very important to talk to your producers. And if you include recycled content, post-consumer scrap, so an aluminum that is seen alive as an object, like a fenestration system, profiles, bike rims, bike frames, wheel hubs, you can go down to 1.9 with 75% of post-consumer scrap. It's a product called Circal in orange. And if you do the next mile, if you go to 100% of post-consumer scrap, so really an aluminum that is produced by only using recycled end-of-life material, you can go down to 0.5. So you see the difference, you see the range. Well, it takes you a few minutes to call your contact and to ask, well, what is the actual carbon footprint of your product? And you can do that for all materials, okay? You can do that for glass, you can do that for concrete, you can do that for cement, for waterproofing. Ask the producers about their carbon footprint. Now, if you look to a facade or a window, of course, it's not only made with aluminum. And my colleagues from Wicona, they are crazy. I mean, they have an aim to develop fenestration systems that will be 100% recyclable in the future, with high rates of recycled content. And they do that for the aluminum, of course, but also for the rubbers, for the gaskets, for the hardware, or the polyamide strips. And they want to confirm that with certifications. For instance, the cradle-to-cradle certification, which I think on the sustainability point of view is the most or the best certification that you can have. So the second tip for you, or the second key, is to ask also for certifications on product. Now let's go into how we can improve the environmental impact of a facade. And I will use 3 examples. The first one is an example in Poland. The second one will be an example in Switzerland. And the third one will be an example in Germany. So let's start to talk about embodied carbon. You know, the carbon footprint related to the emissions of the material and the job site. So this is a real case in Poland. It's a unitized curtain wall. The first study was made by using actually from the shelf drawings and systems that were available from catalogs and guides. Okay? And you see the weight of the different components. I removed the hardware and the glass for the sake of simplicity. So you have 106 kilograms of aluminum, 3 kilograms of polyamide strips, the thermal brakes, and you have 9 kilograms of EPDM gaskets. Then the facade consultants start discussions with our engineers and also with the contractor and the metal builder. And together they came with what they call an engineered version, which allows to reduce the weight of the component because of cost, interesting, but also this allowed to reduce the embodied carbon by 25%. And you see it's mainly the aluminum that has been reduced in weight, but also the gaskets have been simplified. Now let's go back to the first version and apply, let's say, the life cycle assessment values for those different materials. Using values from databases, because at that time, no fabricators or, let's say, no material producer were contacted. So you see for the different materials, and if you select an aluminum coming from, let's say, the entire world, you will have a huge carbon footprint of more than 1,700 kilograms. And if you know that the aluminum has been consumed in Europe, then you will go down to 112. And you see that the other, like polyamide, the gasket, and that goes also for the hardware, are marginal versus this. Let's go back to the engineered version. And let's be clever. Let's use, for instance, an aluminum that has been produced by using renewable energy, the primary aluminum, so the reduxa, and you are going to have a much lower value of 319 kilograms CO2 equivalent. And if you go for the circal using post-consumer scrap, the 75R version, you go down to 153. So all that together gives you a reduction of about 80% of the embodied carbon of your facade on the drawing board. So that means if you spend time to design this accordingly at the beginning, you are able to move the needle quite a lot. System providers like Ricona, they have today software that allow the metal builders or the architect to calculate and to generate on-demand EPDs, which will give you all of those environmental impacts. And what is interesting to know with those software is that they are regularly updated with the latest LCA studies, not only for the raw material, but in the case of aluminum, also with the gate-to-gate emissions for extrusion, powder coating, or anodization as well. So you are always sure to have the latest, and we hope, because we are making improvement in our factories to reduce all the environmental impact, the lowest carbon footprint. And it is an EPD that is actually verified and validated that you can use in your own life cycle assessment for your entire building. So let's go now to the use phase. Here is this project in Switzerland I wanted to share with you. It's a closed cavity facade. Why I'm showing this? Yeah, because it's ticking all the box. You know, everything you can dream on a building in terms of as an architect for the building physics performance of the building, everything around comfort, everything around water tightness, thermal comfort, BIPV, ventilation, prefabrication, you have that in that project. So that means this is possible to do it. And this project is interesting because when you look to the full life cycle costing, the reduction of energy use, to increase comfort, the fact that that building has been designed in a way to reach higher levels in BREEAM and LEED, allow to a better valuation of the project. So I'm not going into detail to explain all that, it will take too long, but this is a kind of state-of-the-art but possible project showing that even today we are still developing innovative solutions to improve the use phase of the building. There is one prerequisite. If you want to have a sustainable building, you have to use sustainable materials. This is quite obvious. And of course, you, as a consumer, you know that labels or certification is a nice way to have a good idea if a material has been correctly harvested, produced according to ESG rules. And you know about the fair trade certification for coffee beans or chocolate. I'm sure you know about the FSC for wood and for paper. The question is, how can you recognize a sustainable profile or a sustainable material? I show you here two profiles in aluminum. Which one is the most sustainable one? Well, tough question. You can't tell. There are no ways to distinguish a sustainable material from one which is not, and that's applicable to all kinds of materials. So for us, this is also a challenge. What can the aluminum industry offer to the designers and architects in terms of sustainable certification across the full value chain? Well, there is one, which is actually called the ISI. It's a totally independent certification, third-party reviewing, double curtain audits, quite strong. I could do the analogy with the FSC, which actually is showing you, demonstrating that the aluminum panels or profiles are actually produced according to those criteria on the ESG. So this is an advice also from me, is to please ask your material suppliers about their sustainable certification on the full value chain. You know it's existing for wood, FSC. You know it's existing for the aluminum, the steel, they have the sustainable steel certification as well. In copper, they have also a certification on copper. So this is important because it gives you trust on the sourcing and the production of those materials. So for the aluminum, it's called the ISI. You don't know about it. Why? Because it's quite new. As I told you, it's an independent certification which has been developed, the standard have been issued 3 years ago. So communication is important. Certification are also important, so ask that to our suppliers. The third project I wanted to show you is a project to demonstrate what is circularity. Circularity or circular economy, it's a bit a buzzword. I mean, we know what it is, but how can we apply that on a building, on a project? So let's take an example. It's a big renovation of office compound in Germany, in Offenburg, where the aluminum windows from the 60s were actually dismantled, sorted, and sent to a recycling plant of ours in Germany and then in Luxembourg to produce new aluminum profiles that will be used for windows. What we did as well is to organize, a team of recyclers to take the glass, but also to take the gaskets and to recycle those products into a new product that will be used for that project. So what has been done, like for the curtain wall example, the design has been improved by talking to the architect, with the other suppliers as well, the facade consultant to come with an improved version, but also keeping a little bit the old-fashioned look of the existing building. So that means the loop has been closed for the raw materials, taking the raw materials from the existing building, for us extruding new profiles with those old windows, and resending those new profiles to the new building or the refurbished building. To close, what is next? What are the next things that will hit you in the coming years? So I could have done a very long presentation with a lot of stuff. The thing I wanted to share with you is the European Green Deal. I mean, it is a great mechanism. It is a great tool to foster more sustainability across the Union. across industries, but also for you architects and building designers and contractors. If we look to all the initiatives related to sustainability, that's this simple galaxy of those European initiatives. A lot of those are related to construction. The green public procurement I told about, the construction product regulation, you have levels, which is the European Green Building Rating Schemes. You have the EPBD, the Energy Performance of Building Regulation. You have the C label, and you have other initiatives that are around that. I'm showing this slide for the last 5 years, and it's getting more and more complex. But 5 years ago, I told it, yeah, that's in the future. Well, a lot of those are or will be soon implemented. So the green public procurement, for instance, the rules for offices are about to hit, let's say, their official life within several months. I can mention also taxonomy and CBAM, and you have heard about all that. So it's a complex subject, but it's good because all that will make your buildings better and will also give you tools to better design your building and have better communication with your stakeholders. And that's the digital product passport, for instance. So what are our advices to you? But just continue what you are doing. Just continue to talk to the material supplier, to the system providers. Just continue to ask for EPD, for life cycle assessment. Don't always rely on average values. Ask companies. Today, in 2024, they should be able to answer you. Was not the case in 2020, but today, yes. Okay. Think about recycling and end of life. Think about using more recycled content, pre- and post-consumer scrap. And then, yeah, implement eco-design. Talk to people that know what to do in terms of a product that can be reused, easy to dismantle, easy to operate, easy to maintain. A lot of providers today have solutions to do that. And then the last tip, actually, that we would like to give you, just to make sure that you have fun doing those building and also faith in sustainability, because it is actually your additional unique selling point in your design as an architect. You had architecture, performance, and now going forward, it will be a sustainable design. Thank you.